Fight Mike here. Today we're going to be doing the predictions and breakdown for UFC 319, headlined by Plessis and Khamzat. Starting off with the early prelim opener, we got Baysanger Sursakayev versus Eric Nolan. I am super excited for this fight. I don't know if this has been fully announced. I only saw this come up maybe 2 hours ago, but I saw it confirmed with a couple of sources that I find somewhat trustworthy. But for a short notice matchup, I'm not usually that excited for them, but this is the exact type of short notice fight I like to watch. If you didn't see the first episode of Dana White Contender Series, you may not know Sursakayev, but he's a very good prospect, very good finisher, really good on the feet, good takedown defense, good on the floor if it gets there. And he showed his really good takedown defense against Tala on his Dana White Contender Series debut yesterday. But he has fantastic kicks, really good knees, good hands as well. He's finished multiple opponents with his knees. But Eric Nolan, the opponent he's coming up against, is no slouch himself. He's never been finished by KO or TKO throughout his career. He's the current CFFC champion. He's on a 3-fight KO streak as well. He's got really good boxing. He throws a lot onto his shots. He's got really good leverage on his punches. And the thing is, why this matchup's so interesting to me is because I think Sursakayev's biggest weakness is his head movement, in my opinion. And Eric Nolan 100% has the one-shot KO power to KO Sursakayev in this fight. I think it's going to be a very not quick, but it's going to be a quite even matchup between the two of them. I think Eric Nolan's going to stay in the UFC after this one. He's shown some good prospect in his fights. But I think that Sursakayev's just going to be able to outwork Eric Nolan in this one and be able to win a 29-28 decision. I think Eric Nolan might even drop Sursakayev maybe in the first round. But as the fight goes along, I'm sure Sursakayev's probably in better shape, seeing as he fought yesterday. And he looked in pretty good shape for that fight. He came in on that fight even on 6 days' notice. So he's obviously a year-round trainer. And he was really jumping at the opportunity to fight at UFC 319, and he's one of Khamzat Chimaev's training partners, so I think he's going to have a good showing for himself in his UFC debut. I hope that this fight doesn't fall through. I hope neither guys miss weight, so I'm praying that this fight goes through. But moving on to the next, I'm picking Sursakayev to win by a 29-28 decision. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Alibi Idris versus Joseph Moraes. I'm going to be picking Alibi Idris in this one. I thought Joseph Moraes had a bad performance in his last fight. I thought that he robbed his opponent as well. And Alibi Idris is a very good opponent. He's very fast. He's very diverse on the feet. He's very slick on the ground as well. And I think he's just going to be able to get a round 1 KO over Joseph Moraes. I think Moraes is going to be a lot slower than him. Skill for skill in most aspects of MMA. He's a lot less skilled than Alibi Idris. So I think that Idris will be able to get this one done. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Rodrigo Cezinato versus Danil Donchenko. I'm going to be going with Danil Donchenko to get this one done by decision. I think that Cezinato is probably going to have some success early on in the fight, but Danil's very gritty, he's very powerful, he's known to cheat to win if he needs to, and he's better on the feet than Cezinato. I think he's going to be a fun fighter for the UFC, and I think he's definitely going to get this one done by a decision. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Karine Silva versus Dione Barboza. This is the rematch we've all been waiting for. We didn't need Du Plessis versus Strickland. This should have been the main event for UFC 312. But Karine Silva was initially scheduled to face JJ Aldridge on this card, but JJ had to pull out due to injury. I think Karine will probably get this one done. Dione does have a shot in this fight, but she always looks like she's sparring in every single one of her fights. And she's shown iffy fight IQ every single time that she fights as well. She'll be having an impressive performance on the feet, looking really slick, but then we'll go for a head and arm throw and just throw herself on bottom, or pull a guillotine in a round that she's winning, a very loose guillotine as well. She just makes those sorts of decisions, and I think that Karine Silva will be able to capitalize on those sorts of decisions. Although Karine Silva had a less than impressive performance against Viviane Araújo last fight out, it was close enough to where I think that she's going to be able to beat a Dione Barboza by a 29-28 decision. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Brian Battle versus Nursultan Ruziboev. I'm going to be going with Brian Battle on this fight, but watching tape on this is so initially when the fight got released, I was picking Brian Battle to win, but as I was watching tape, I was thinking, Zoltan could definitely get this done. Because one thing that Brian Battle does on the feet is that he likes to lean back and evade, just because his head movement and slipping and countering isn't that effective for him. And Ruzaboev is a massive guy, and I could see him clipping Brian Battle at the end of one of his punches. And the thing is that Ruzaboev is listed as 6'5". I think he'll be only marginally taller than Battle, but that makes that defensive Battle where he leans backwards and tries to just like outrange you. I think that that's not going to work against Ruzaboev. I think Ruzaboev's footwork is going to be difficult for Battle. Battle's a little bit more ploddy with his footwork, and Ruzaboev might be quite difficult for Battle to hit. But I think the Battle might get hurt in the first round, but bring it back with takedowns in round 2 or 3 with a 29-28 decision. I don't think that he's going to be able to straight out muscle Ruzaboev though. So I think that rounds 2 and 3 are going to be very, very close between the two of them, just because Ruzaboev's like weirdly slick on the ground. But I just thought that his last fight. Oh, I hate that I forgot his last opponent's name. I need to look this up very quickly. But Ruzaboev in his last fight was coming up against someone who wasn't the most amazing grappler. And I think that if Dustin Stoltzfus wasn't able to... if Dustin Stoltzfus was able to dominate Ruzaboev on the ground when he could get him there at points of the fight, not for the whole fight, I think that Brian Battle's more technically sound than Dustin Stoltzfus, probably just as strong. And I think that he's going to be able to control Ruzaboev if it gets to the ground. And I think that he's going to be able to not out-muscle him on the cage, but be able to outwork him in the clinch with some good clinch knees. And he'll be able to stink up the fight if he needs to beat Ruzaboev. But Ruzaboev's a very live underdog. If you see during this fight that Ruzaboev's a lot faster straight away in the fight, and he doesn't seem to be using too much energy to hit Battle, live bet Ruzaboev. So I think Battle's still going to get it done, though, by a 29-28 decision. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Edson Barboza versus Drakkar Klose. I'm going to be picking Drakkar Klose by decision. I would really like to take Barboza on this fight, and I admit that he does have a good chance, especially on the feet, but I think that Drakkar Klose is going to be able to bully Edson Barboza on the grappling, in the clinch, on the floor. He's just going to be able to, every time he lays his hands on Edson that's not in punching range, he's going to be able to bully Barboza. And I would even say that the Barboza that fought Sadiq Yusuf, I think, wins this fight, but I've seen such a speed downgrade from Barboza, and his kicks look so much slower. He doesn't throw them as regularly. His punches look half speed compared to what they used to, and defensively, he doesn't move out the way of shots very well. And I think in this fight, it's just going to look similar to the Drakkar Klose versus Joaquin Silva, except a more dangerous version of Joaquin Silva. I'd say Drakkar is probably pretty similar to Edson in the defense aspect. When he is starting to get hit and when his opponent moves forward, he does struggle moving backwards. But I just don't think that Edson's going to be powerful enough to move a guy like Drakkar Klose backwards. One thing about Drakkar, though, he's taken a few violent KOs across his career to guys like Alvarez and Beneil Dariush, so he's going to be a little bit skittish on the feet, and he always does look quite skittish on the feet, and his footwork, like Barboza, is quite slow when moving backwards. But Drakkar's got that good ability to smother you when he crosses that black line. Even against Joaquin Silva, he didn't really get his grappling off that effectively against Joaquin, but he was able to push him up against the fence, wear on him, dominate him. Well, not dominate, it was a close-ish fight, but I think that Drakkar's quite a strong guy, and he's quite difficult to come up against. And people talk about him like he's some bum with like literally no good performances in his career. But he's 9-3 in the UFC. Even if his 9 wins aren't the most impressive wins, he's quite a good fighter. And being able to beat guys dominantly throughout his career is an impressive feat for him, and he's very powerful. And a 37, 38-year-old Edson Barboza, I think, stands a lot less of a chance against Drakkar Klose. I think Drakkar's going to get this done by a 30-27 decision, where we're finally telling Edson Barboza to hang up the gloves. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. I'm going to be going with Chase Hooper by decision. I was considering the submission in this one, but Alexander Hernandez is probably going to be crafty enough to stay alive in the fight. The thing is that Hernandez is very good, very technical, but there's not much X factor to him, apart from his looping overhands and his power. And I think that you need some sort of technical aspects that are better than Chase Hooper in the fight to be able to beat him. I think Chase is going to be comfortable enough on the feet with Hernandez just because Hernandez is a bit more of like a straight fighter, not straight punching fighter, but he's a less diverse fighter. He likes his low kicks, he likes his jabs, he likes his overhands, and he'll shoot a takedown every now and then. He's a very straightforward fighter to game plan against, and it sort of gives Hooper nothing specifically to worry about. And Hooper's getting a lot better on the feet. We've seen that over his last few fights. And Hernandez isn't going to have a point in the fight where he feels safe against Hooper. I think Hooper's going to be able to get onto Anthony Hernandez's back as Hernandez gets up from different positions. And I'm going to be picking Chase Hooper by a 30-27 decision. I think he's going to get close to a bunch of different submissions. He's going to spend a lot of time on the back. I think he's going to threaten a couple of front chokes. I think he's going to just really dominate this fight as soon as it hits the ground. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Jessica Andrade versus Lupi Godinez. I'm going to be picking Jessica Andrade in this fight. I know I hate picking Andrade in her fights, but I prefer that she's back down at strawweight. At flyweight, she's super undersized. And I think to beat Andrade, you need the submission threat as well as some very good striking to mix it up. And although Lupi's not terrible on the ground, she's not really the same level as like a Jasmine Jasudavicius who is able to finish Andrade on the ground. I think when they get back up to the feet, I think Andrade is going to be able to land some nice hooks over the top. She's going to like stop Lupi from wanting to come forward. And that's going to stop the takedown attempts of Lupi Godinez. And I think that Andrade is going to be able to win a 29-28 decision in this fight. Moving on to the next one, I know I've picked so many of these fights to be 29-28 decisions, but that's genuinely how most of these ones go down, so I feel like I'm righteous for picking these. Moving on to the next fight, that we've got Mikhail Oleksiejczuk versus GM3, Gerald Meerschaert. I almost just called him Gerald Meerfart, but I'm going to be going with Mikhail Oleksiejczuk by first round highlight reel Fighting Nerds TKO. If you're a betting man and you see Gerald like coming to the third round, bet the house on GM3 because this is the sort of fight that he gets like a classic GM3 finish on. But I'm not going to be making a prediction on an urban legend this time around. I think Mikhail's going to be a lot faster, a lot slicker on the feet. I think the kicks of Mikhail are really going to annoy Gerald Meerschaert on the feet. I could see him hurting Gerald to the body. I think the body kicks of Mikhail will be open all night. I think GM3 is going to get caught very early, start spam shooting takedowns pretty early, and I think Mikhail with his new Fighting Nerds composure will not rush a finish, and he'll end up patiently finishing off with maybe like a right hand over the top a couple of minutes later. I think people underrate how good Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is on the feet. He dropped an unchinnable Kevin Holland, and he had a close-ish fight against Shara Magomedov. If you remember the fight against Shara, he had a better performance, I would argue, than Mark Powerbar Andre Barriault. I think that Marc-Andre was able to have some good moments in that fight, especially with breaking the nose of Shara Magomedov. But Mikhail actually caused some problems for Shara. He was keeping up with him-ish on the feet, and I just don't see GM3 staying alive against a Shara Magomedov on the feet, or even staying alive against a Kevin Holland. Although he's going to be the much better grappler out of the two, he's not going to have the speed or explosivity to get the takedown on Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. So I think that he's going to get a first round KO on GM3. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Bobby Green versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. I'm going to be going with Carlos Diego Ferreira by a second round submission. I see most people picking Bobby Green to get chinned in this fight, and it's very, very likely, I will say that. But Carlos Diego Ferreira, he does get one-shot KOs, especially on people like the Michael Johnsons of the division and the Bobby Greens of the division. But I think the Bobby is going to look pretty good at the start of the fight. I think he's going to be quite slick. He's going to be faster than Carlos Diego Ferreira early on. But he's going to be so wary not to get flatline KO'd that it's going to open up the takedowns for Carlos Diego Ferreira. And I think that Green is either going to give his backup getting up from the takedown, or he's going to get mounted from getting taken down and turn over, giving up his back. And I think that Carlos is going to threaten some ground and pound, start teeing off on Bobby Green's head. And then I think that Bobby Green's honestly going to lift his neck up and avoid the KO so he can keep his contract going and get submitted by Carlos Diego Ferreira in the second round. I really don't think that Bobby Green's going to be able to defend the takedowns of Ferreira, especially after getting flatline KO'd a few times in his last 4 fights. I think he's going to be much more willing to get submitted than get finished by KO. So I think CLD is going to get this one done in second round submission. Moving on to the next fight is Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. I genuinely hate predicting this fight because I think it's going to be a very fun fight. That's not what I'm hating on, but I genuinely want to pick Tim Elliott in this fight, which is a stupid thing to say. But if he wins, I'm going to be so mad. Oh my god. Oh, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that this is a video-ly occurrence where I get deathly sick in the very middle of the video, but we're going to tough through it. Gosh, but I really want to pick Tim Elliott in this fight. I'm not going to, though. But everyone's talking about Kai Asakura, how he's going to flatline KO Tim Elliott. But genuinely, when has Tim been flatlined? And I'll give you the answer. It was in his third ever fight. He's never been TKO'd in the UFC. He's been hurt a couple of times, but Tim is not the guy that we see get flatlined like year in, year out. But I make it a point to pick against these guys that have over 1.5 year layoffs, and Tim Elliott's been so inactive since his fights against like Muhammad Makayev and that year where he had 3 fights. He's just been not fighting since 2023, and when people don't fight for that long, the timing's never as good. They look jittery to start the fights. And even with a long layoff going against Tim Elliott, I find it hard not to pick him. Just because Asakura does a lot of flying knees, he does a lot of stuff to put him off balance. And whilst this gives him the opportunity to hurt his opponent really bad, it also gives the opportunity to his opponents to either take him down or hold him there, or to hurt Asakura himself. The other thing is, people talk about Asakura like he's got this brick wall takedown defense, but if you watch recent fights of his, he gets taken down here and there, and people talk about him defending Merab's takedowns, but everyone defends Merab's takedowns every now and then, unless you're Sean O'Malley. But from fighting for so long with ropes, I think that the cage takedowns will likely have some success with Tim. But this is why I'm not picking Tim in this fight, because his punches aren't going to have enough sting on them to be able to push Asakura back in the first place. I think he needs to push Asakura back to behind the black line to even secure the takedown himself. And I doubt that he's going to be able to. Whilst I reckon he could hold Asakura down if he gets him there. And I think he's even going to win a round doing that. I just don't see that Asakura is going to be pushed back predominantly by Tim Elliott. I see Tim Elliott moving backwards, shooting some like bad takedowns every now and then, making it a 29-28 close decision for Kai Asakura. I think Asakura is going to have success in the striking for the first 2 rounds and maybe get taken down in the 3rd round. But I think he's going to be so much faster than Tim Elliott. He's probably going to school Tim Elliott on the feet. And Tim Elliott's just sort of going to be surviving those first 2 rounds, spam shooting takedowns. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got Jared Cannonier versus Michael Page. I was considering picking Jared Cannonier in this one, just because he can wrestle really well. He's probably better than a lot of Michael Page's last opponents. But after watching his last 3 fights against Imavov, Baralho, and Gregory Rodriguez, especially the Gregory Rodriguez fight, which is weird because he won that one, but the Gregory Rodriguez fight showed me that he is really slowed down from his fights. Like each one of those fights I just named as well, he dropped in speed from the Imavov fight to the Baralho fight, from the Baralho fight to the Gregory Rodriguez fight. I saw a dip in speed, and that I really do see a downfall from Jared Cannonier. And the thing is that in that fight, Gregory Rodriguez looked so much faster than MVP until he slowed down. And that, not than MVP, Gregory looked so much faster than Jared Cannonier until he slowed down. MVP's not going to slow down. And although Gregory is a very fast and very explosive guy, he's literally nowhere near the speed of MVP. MVP has faster speed than every one of the welterweights. He's almost got lightweight speed, MVP does, and that's going to really help him here in this matchup. And to win this fight, I think that Jared Cannonier genuinely has to catch MVP making a mistake. And it's one of those predictions where I'm not going to pick someone just by making a silly mistake in a fight. I'm not going to pick MVP by making a silly mistake like he did against that guy who KO'd him in Bellator. And this is one of those fights where if you're looking at Jared Cannonier's last few performances, he's been getting hurt so much. Not necessarily getting finished in all of them, but I literally have the visual in my head of MVP leaping into range and Jared getting flash knockdown from that same leaping right hand. He might not be hurt, he might not be rocked at all, but like Gregory Rodriguez in that first fight, in that first round, Jared Cannonier was getting caught on the top of the head and getting sat down from them. He wasn't looking rocked, but it was easily winning Gregory Rodriguez the rounds. And I think that that's going to happen in all of the rounds of this fight. I think that it'll go to a decision and MVP is going to have the advantage due to bigger moments. One thing that does worry me in this matchup, though, for MVP is the leg kicks of Jared Cannonier. But even then, I think that leg kicks, MVP is going to be able to deal with them. The quickest way that he usually gets rid of the leg kicks is by just flying him with the right hand, and I think that he's going to be faster than Jared Cannonier's leg kick with his flying right hand. And I even see it just as an advantage with MVP being able to knock Jared Cannonier off balance with the kick, just because you're already on one leg, so it gives you way more of an opportunity for Michael Page to knock you down. Another spot where I think it might be a little bit difficult for Michael Page is because he leaps into range so much. He does end up in the clinch a lot, and I think that Jared Cannonier is going to be much the stronger guy in the clinch. If you remember the Sharon Magomedov fight, Michael Page was shooting into the clinch after that flying, leaping right hand, and I think that Jared Cannonier is probably going to win those clinch positions, maybe even get a takedown in those clinch positions. I think it's not going to be enough, but it's going to make the rounds close enough to where people are talking about, oh, Jared Cannonier still look very good out there, but Michael Page, that guy, he's the next level. So I think Michael Page is going to win maybe a 29-28 on one scorecard, 30-27 on the other two. Decision in this fight. Moving on to the next one, though, we've got Jeff Neal versus Carlos Prates. I'm going to be going with Carlos Prates in this one, though. This should be a very, very fun fight, though. I just think that this is where the hype train for Carlos Prates picks back up. Just because he didn't look amazing in that Ian Gary fight, and he didn't step on the gas until the 4th and 5th rounds, and he sort of looks like he had no game plan to come in with, I think he's going to have a much better performance in this one. He even said on the Pound for Pound podcast, I think it was about a week ago, he said each time the round would start, he would think, oh, I'll be able to finish in this round. And then when it would finish, he would be like, oh no, I got another one after this. He sort of believed in that nuclear power that he does have. He believed in all the hype that everyone was giving him. And I also think that that was to do with the 5 rounds. I think he thought that he had unlimited time to get Ian Gary out of there. So we never really stepped on the pace to attempt to get Ian Gary out of there. So I think this being a 3-rounder, I think Prates is going to be able to have the same sort of game plan that he had in his first 4 fights in the UFC where he was getting flatline KOs. I think the 3-rounder really leans to Prates. I think he'll know that he can step on the pace. He's done it time and time again. And I think he's going to be able to tag Neal up to a somewhat competitive decision. The thing is that Prates is going to give a lot of issues to Jeff Neal with range, because every single person with more range than Jeff Neal has beaten Jeff Neal in the past. If you think about it, Ian Gary, taller than Jeff Neal, maybe not longer arms, but definitely taller, a bit longer. Shavkat Rakhmonov, little bit taller, longer arms as well. Neil Magny, a guy who's really not that skilled. Well, I shouldn't have said that. I sound like such a dickhead for saying that. But Neil Magny, a guy who's not the most skilled or not the most difficult striker to come up against. Neil Magny's sideways footwork and a lot of movement with all his range was a struggle for Jeff Neal to get around. Stephen Thompson, another guy, he's a little bit longer than Jeff Neal. Not too much, but he gave Jeff Neal problems the entire fight. The point is that every single one of the guys that he has a close fight to and loses is always taller, always longer than him. And another thing that doesn't bode well for him is that he's super inactive. His last fight was in February, where he lost. Well, his last proper fight was in February, where he lost against Ian Gary in a close decision. And then he came back at UFC 308 against RDA, and RDA, who was 38 years old, had already fought 20 of the best opponents in his last 20 fights. And he hurt RDA, former lightweight as well, I will bring that up. And 1 minute 30 into the fight, he hurts RDA, and then RDA blew his knee out. So it's not like Jeff Neal's been having good performance after good performance. It's been years. I wouldn't even call UFC 308 the performance against RDA a performance yet, because RDA looked terrible out there, and RDA, we know, was 39 years old. He was looking really bad in the fight. He looked so slow in the fight. And a minute and 30 of octagon time in the last 18 months doesn't make me think that you're going to be the sharpest when you step in there. And if you think about Carlos Prates in the last 18 months, he's had 4 KOs, and he fought Ian Gary as well, and even though he lost, it's at least something compared to Jeff Neal only fighting Ian Gary 18 months ago and losing by a split decision. I think that in this fight, Prates will be able to make the necessary adjustments to be able to win this fight. I don't think Jeff Neal has had enough octagon time to make those necessary adjustments. And we've seen Jeff Neal hasn't ever made the necessary adjustments against taller opponents. All the guys that Jeff Neal schools are like a Vicente Luque, a Bilal Muhammad. These guys are really good fighters in their own right, but they're all around the same size as Jeff Neal. I think when you've got a really big size advantage on Jeff Neal, because he's such a forwards and backwards mover, you're able to clip Jeff Neal where he's not able to clip you. And these guys who are longer, they're often doing a lot of sideways movement, and Jeff Neal's always struggled with that. So I think that Prates is going to be able to win a decision in this one. I don't see him finishing Neal. I could see a finish in this one, maybe a first or second round, but I think if it goes to the third round, we're going to start seeing Jeff Neal plod forward, get some clinch work on. We don't pretend, even though Jeff Neal's really fun to watch, don't pretend he's not allergic to a stinker every now and then. That is what we could be seeing in this fight. But I think that Prates will be able to get it done by 30-27 decision. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. This is probably going to be a stupid sounding prediction for this one, but I'm going to be going with Lerone Murphy by TKO in this fight. And I feel like I'm definitely going on a limb to go by a TKO because he hasn't got a KO in so many years. But in this fight, I think it's genuinely a big step down in competition again for Lerone, and it should show. Lerone's been fighting guys like Josh Emmett, Dan Ige, Edson Barboza, whereas Pico, even if they're all older fighters in their own right, Josh Emmett peaked at his older age. Dan Ige's not old, and he was in his peak fighting Lerone. Edson Barboza definitely was old, but again, he was a skilled guy still at that point. He was coming off the Sadiq Youssef win, so it was still a good version of Barboza. Whereas Pico, coming into this fight, is beating a 39-21-7 Henry Corrales, who had beaten Aaron Pico like 7 years before, or a 13-7, now 13-10 Pedro Carvalho, who is now on a 4-fight losing streak, or a 11-8 James Gonzalez. Like, what sort of strength are we holding into these opponents? And if people are coming into the UFC and they've had like some wins, I'm trying to think of the featherweight division. If, let's say, someone was coming into fighting Lerone Murphy and he was in the UFC but unranked, and he had wins over like Julian Erosa, Melquizael Costa, and Christian Rodriguez, which, mind you, all have better records than Henry Corrales, Pedro Carvalho, and James Gonzalez. You wouldn't think that either of those guys are going to beat Lerone Murphy, would you? And think, they've got UFC records that aren't amazing looking UFC records, but they're better than 11-8. They're better than 13-7. These are guys who I think are more skilled than James Gonzalez. These guys, I think Melquizael Costa beats Pedro Carvalho. I think Christian Rodriguez beats Henry Corrales at 39 years old. So what weight am I holding on these wins for Aaron Pico? Basically none, to be honest. I'm looking at these wins like they're regional level wins. I know that they're maybe in their prime or a little bit better, but the only person who I would say I rate is maybe an Adam Borix on Aaron Pico's resume, and it's not even like that fight really counts because it was baby Aaron Pico. In this fight, though, not just talking about their matchups before, I see a little, style-wise, this was always going to be a difficult fight for Lerone Murphy. We've seen him tagged a few times by good boxers like Dan Ige. It does worry me seeing the boxing between the two of them, and I could see Lerone getting finished by some punches by Aaron Pico. But I also do see Pico getting caught himself. I think that Pico's going to hurt Lerone. But the thing is, the highlights of Pico would have you believe that he's the best boxer in MMA in general, with nuclear power and fantastic technique, and that is all true. But if you watch the stuff in between his highlights, that's sort of what worries me. He does a lot of feinting at range, A lot of just level changing without doing anything. And unless he's fully in the pocket or he's shooting a takedown, he doesn't really do that much at range. He'll throw a leg kick every now and then, throw a body kick every now and then, but he's not really trying to finish you at range, and he's not really adding up the points like a guy like, God, I forgot his name, Lerone Murphy will. Pardon me. But people love the comparison between Lerone Murphy and Leon Edwards. And whilst I do agree, there's one major difference, and the major difference that I think will be the difference in this fight. Lerone Murphy is one of the biggest gamers in the UFC. He knows when to step on the pace, he knows when he's losing rounds, and when he can save energy and conserve and come back the next round better. He's more gritty than Leon Edwards could ever be. And I think that getting shot in the head probably does that to you. But I think that people think in this fight that Aaron Pico is just going to be able to, rock him at points, and then Lerone Murphy is just going to stand at range like Leon Edwards, fainting leg kicks repeatedly. And I really don't see that being the case in this fight. Another wrinkle to this fight is that we've seen Lerone get out grappled at the beginning of fights by guys like Marquand and Amir Khani, and he got a brutal KO on him with a knee as he was coming in. And I know that that's such a luck situation. Not even a luck, but it's such a timing situation that's very unlikely to happen. But I think that he's got enough takedown defense and enough threatening positions when people shoot on him. Got a good guillotine as well, that Aaron Pico is not just going to have a free takedown on him. I think Aaron Pico will have a couple of takedowns stuffed, maybe get a couple of takedowns. I think that Lerone Murphy is going to be able to work back to his feet. Aaron Pico is probably going to shoot a few more takedowns, and I think Lerone might catch him in the body with a knee that sort of deters Aaron Pico from taking him down, because you'll realize that the timing's starting to get closer for Lerone. And then I think Lerone's going to start teeing off on him, throwing a couple of straight shots here and now, throwing some nasty body kicks, a lot of leg kicks, and I think he might even get a head kick KO. I could see a leg kick, not a leg kick KO. I could see him leg kicking him onto the ground and getting some ground and pound TKO. Just because Aaron Pico, he's sort of got that long, boxing stance. He's got a very low set, wide stance. I think he's going to be very easy to leg kick. I think he's going to be easy to body kick. And Aaron Pico, it's not like he's Ilia Topuria, where he's got a granite chin, where he can use this boxing head movement and use this, this slick body punching, because they can take the shots if they come. Aaron Pico's kind of got a glass chin, and I can see Lerone Murphy catching Aaron Pico coming in. I think that most people are so worried about the wrestling coming up against Aaron Pico that they abandon the kicks. I don't think Lerone's going to be scared of that. He's had people shooting takedowns on him for years. I think he's going to be fine in the wrestling, and I think he's going to be able to win a competitive decision between the two of them. No, not a competitive decision. I think he's going to win by a late round TKO against Aaron Pico. I think he's going to break his nose and finish him or something like that. Not really sure how, but I think a late round TKO is how I'm going to pick it. Moving on to the main event of the evening, I've done a full breakdown of this fight between Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev. I've linked that in the description below if you would like to watch that. It's a 13 to 15 minute breakdown. I went pretty in depth with it, so I'm not going to go as in depth, so you don't have to listen to the exact same points twice. But Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev, a lot of fans are split on this one. A lot of people are picking Khamzat to win by first round submission. And then anyone picking Dricus is picking him by a finish in the later rounds. But I actually disagree with both. I think that we're going to see a back and forth war, especially in those later rounds. We don't really know a lot about this fight. That's why I think it's so exciting, because we don't know how good Dricus' takedown defense is. We're not going to know how good Khamzat's cardio is going to work against a middleweight like Dricus du Plessis. But what we do know, Khamzat's going to sprint in there. Dricus is going to try go for a marathon. I expect Khamzat to open early, get an early takedown on Dricus, probably dominate. I do think that Dricus is going to roll to his back. I don't think that he's going to work with the opportunity, giving Khamzat the opportunity to take his back. I think he's going to work from half guard or work from full guard and sort of just not let Khamzat tee off on him with ground and pound, but I think he's going to allow the ground and pound compared to lifting his chin up and getting submitted in the first round. I think that Khamzat is probably going to approach this like he did the Whittaker fight. And you might think that that's like him going balls to the walls, but I kind of disagree. I think Khamzat in the Whittaker fight was the most patient we've ever seen him. You watch the Kevin Holland fight, you watch the Kamaru Usman fight, you watch the Gilbert Burns fights. In all of those fights, he's like going balls to the wall to get that early takedown, or he's just pushing so hard in that first round for the finish. Whereas in the Whittaker fight, he pushed for dominant position, and then he spent a lot of time waiting. He spent a lot of time waiting for Whittaker to move, waiting for him to make a mistake. So I think he's evolved his game in the sense that he's not really just trying to force you into submission. I think he's trying to force you into making some bad decisions, but then capitalizing on those bad decisions. I think he's using so much less energy. And if you saw the end of that fight in the Whittaker versus Khamzat fight, it was towards the end of the round that he finished Whittaker, and he looked completely fresh in there. That's not me saying I think that Khamzat's going to be able to do that till the 5th round. I really don't. But I think round 1, Dricus is going to get taken down, play guard, Khamzat control the most of the round. I think this round is going to be closer than people think. I think Khamzat might not get a 10-8. It'll probably still be the entire round of Khamzat being on top, but I don't think it's going to be a back take. I don't think he's going to be in mount. I think he's going to be working from side control, working from half guard. I think Dricus isn't really going to work to his feet that much. I think he's just going to try and make Khamzat work on the ground, because Dricus is a very, very smart guy. Like, he fights like he's not, but he is very smart. We see in the first fight against Strickland, he had such an ironed out game plan. If you watched his interviews after the fact, he was saying he wanted to play Strickland's style of stand-up for the first 2 rounds and then play his style for the next 3. And we really saw that in him, because he didn't really shoot as much. He wasn't really fighting his fight in the first 2 rounds. He sort of lulled Strickland into a false sense of security and then caught him off guard in the second, 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. But then in the second fight that they had against each other, you could see the adjustments he made in the striking. And I know that this isn't a striking affair. I think he's going to be able to make the adjustments against Khamzat. I think he's going to see all the errors that people have made against Khamzat. He's going to see that Whittaker maybe became overzealous in trying to get up, and that's why he got finished. Or maybe Kamaru Usman did a good job by not really trying to get up throughout the entire round and just surviving the first round. Maybe he did do a good job, and maybe Dricus follows on after that. And I think he will. I think Dricus learns from people's mistakes, and I think in round 2, Khamzat's going to get another takedown, and I think he's probably going to dominate this round even more, but that's going to be due to him using more energy. I think he's going to realize that Dricus isn't really playing his game. He's going to be able to, Khamzat's going to look for more damage. I think I could see even Dricus getting some swelling on him like he did in the Sean Strickland first fight. But round 3 will start. Khamzat will slow. Dricus will pressure. I think Khamzat's still going to land some takedowns, as Dricus's striking style of bum rushing forward will lead him to getting taken down in those later rounds. And I think that's going to be sort of what lets Khamzat survive throughout the fight. I think that Dricus charging in is going to make him an easy target for a takedown, and Khamzat will be able to control him from a little bit of round 3, but I think this is where Dricus is going to be able to start getting up. He's going to be able to start pressuring Khamzat on the feet, drawing out some bad takedown attempts from Khamzat. I think that this is where we see a close-ish round, but I think that we see Dricus start to come ahead, but it's not going to be to the point where people think. I think people think it'll hit the 3rd round, and Dricus is going to be teeing off on Khamzat, dunking him on his head for some reason. Khamzat's going to be gasping for air. I really don't think so. I think round 3, they're still going to look quite even, but Dricus is going to look a little bit better in the round, winning the round very slightly. I think round 4 will be a clear Dricus round. I think this will be a round where it's a little bit close as well, but Khamzat will be shooting less, but I think he's going to conserve his energy a lot more. I can see in these 3rd and 4th rounds him standing and trading a lot more with Dricus, but not in the sense where he can't shoot takedowns, but more in the sense where he's saving the takedowns. I think he's going to really try and win those first 2 rounds and then conserve the 3rd and 4th so that he can save himself, if need be, to win a 5th round if need be. And I think that Dricus is going to be teeing off on Khamzat for a little bit more of this fight. I think that he's not going to be able to just land shots here and there. He's not going to be able to beat up Khamzat every time they're on the feet. I think that he's going to be able to slightly outpoint him at times and maybe put on a little bit of damage, winning the 4th round. But then round 5, I think is going to be a complete all-out war. I think Khamzat's going to be spam shooting takedowns. He's going to be searching for the finish the entire time. I think Drickus is going to be getting back up, landing some big shots, getting taken down again. We're all going to be thinking, no, Drickus got taken down after landing a 4-punch combination. This is all over. And then Drickus is going to work back to his feet. I think it's going to be a genuine round of the year contender. And I could see a finish either way in that round. But I think that Drickus is going to be survivable in that round. He's going to be able to get up. He's going to be able to land the more damage on Khamzat. I can see in those 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds that Khamzat will either have to choose between submission or ground and pound. He's going to have to at least choose between control or submission and ground and pound. So it's either control or finishing the fight. And I think he's going to have to choose control because you'll see that he'll try a couple of rear naked choke attempts. Drickus is going to be able to get back up. I think he's going to escape a couple of the submission attempts. And then Khamzat towards the end of the fight is going to think, hey, I need to control this guy more than just finish him. Because he's starting to get up, he's starting to have more success. I just need to win the moments. And that's going to cause him to strike less, put on less damage. And I think that Drickus is going to have a slightly land more damage in the last 3 rounds. Where some people, the crowd are going to be calling for a Khamzat Chimaev robbery win where they think, oh, it's 5-0 Khamzat. He got takedowns in these 3 rounds, in these last 3 rounds. But on damage, I think Drickus is going to win those last 3 rounds. And so many people are going to be calling for a robbery. But I think Drickus wins 48-47, wins the last 3 rounds, very close rounds. And I think that we're going to be talking about these guys where it's like, we're really surprised with DDP's grappling, or we're really surprised with Khamzat striking in the fight. So let me know what you think of the predictions I've made in this video below. What do you think of the fight? What do you think is going to be the result of Lerone Murphy and Aaron Pico? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.